Hate is love in retreat. Fear. Fear is a scary emotion, but don't just feel it, use it. Every unpleasant emotion of yours screams out that you have limiting beliefs or a false understanding, and fear is no different. Let me relate a personal fear-based experience I used to have. In my life, I've flown hundreds of thousands of miles on every rickety airline and type of aircraft imaginable. Yet, about 15 years ago, when flying across the United States, I looked down at the earth from my window seat about 7 miles high and suddenly felt a terror I'd never known before. And I do mean terror. It was as if every cell in my body was vibrating. Fear. A horrible fear. A fear that you'd almost do anything to avoid. This fear seemingly came from nowhere and it tore through me. I've never ever been remotely scared of heights before, so I was shocked to be having these feelings. Well, that terror sporadically appeared on almost all my flights over the next 7 or 8 years. And because it seemed so irrational to me, I couldn't pin down the limiting beliefs or misunderstandings that gave it occasion to arise. Instead, every time it happened and in between flights, I just blasted myself with countless reasons, beliefs, why I shouldn't be afraid, including flight safety statistics. The fact that as a spiritual being, I'm indestructible, that so called accidents like coincidences never happen, that death is only an illusion, things like that, and finally, having willfully and regularly immersed myself into seeing things from a new perspective and forcing myself to continue flying when I had the option. The terror gradually subsided. Goodness, I'm out of breath. Where's my breath? And I'm sleepy. Could use a nap. Okay, where was I? It's like the fear existed in one room of many in the mansion of my mind, and I learned where that room was and developed the ability to avoid it. And while I still don't know how that room got there, I do know that I'm better off for having moved through it, and that because of it, I was able to ingrain into my being greater truths about myself and the world I live in that were quite obviously lacking from my repertoire. Report, rep, repertoire. Of course, not all fears are so obvious. The fear of failure, disappointment, being hurt, or not being approved of, for example, are all virtually invisible fears until you're tested. Then wham, you know something's going on. But again, once you're tested, it means it's time to grow, which can only happen by facing and dealing with your fears and when possible, following them to the limiting beliefs that have created the false perceptions. As I did with my fear of flying, I used my bulldoze and liquefy approach to deal with the limiting beliefs, supplanting the invisible beliefs that gave rise to fear by understanding and acting on other truths about my condition and my reality. Incidentally, I never did figure out what my limiting beliefs were that created my fear of flying, which illustrates that uncovering the culprit isn't even necessary when it comes to moving forward and beyond it. Sadness and depression. The best thing I've ever read about depression came from one of Jane Roberts' Seth books. Very simply, depression is the result of feeling powerless to change your circumstances and feeling trapped by your life. If this is where you are, facing it or admitting it is the first step. Is the first step. Then begin realizing that you are, of course, powerful. You've just lost some momentum. It's like riding a bike. You've got to keep moving in order to stay balanced. I know that's easier said than done, particularly under stressful or challenging circumstances. So the best advice I can give is to begin taking baby steps, forcing change in the areas of your life that trouble you most. If you're lonely, go to the mall or anywhere and smile and look for friendly faces. You don't have to talk to anyone, but go get moving. If you're sad about something, after the initial healing that may require some alone time, start encouraging yourself to focus on other things. Go to new places, try new things, get on your bike and ride. And while this may not be easy at first, enduring the sadness or pain you may feel isn't any easier. Only by doing something about it will you enable the emotions to subside. Always do what you can. You might not meet someone at the mall, but on your way you might see a billboard advertising an event that interests you. This is an example of life's magical serendipities that can only be encountered by taking action. By keeping yourself busy, maybe by resuming an old friendship or taking up an old sport or game you used to enjoy. You can then branch out to find new relationships and experiences that you can't even imagine now. Best of all, when you do what you can, you make yourself far more available to all your other wonderful thoughts that are seeking to burst into your life as new manifestations. Whew. I want some watermelon. And these thoughts simply can't do this if you are unreachable, at home waiting for a miracle. Anger. Anger is similar to depression in that it results from a perceived loss of power or control felt over a period of time. Yet, instead of, or in addition to, being overcome with a passive sense of depression, and instead of constructively dealing with these perceptions as they arise, the situation is allowed to simmer until it is ultimately attacked with rage. Of course, since you're the one going into a rage, you're the one who will suffer its consequences in the form of disturbing your own health, increasing the friction or stress in your relationships, and providing no solution to the original disturbance. The sad irony with anger is that it's always expressed in an attempt to correct or rectify a situation. Yes, its expression does the exact opposite. Anger worsens any situation for you, whomever you're angry with, and the relationship between you. And because anger is destructive, it's especially important that it be addressed, not suppressed. Suppressed anger will only reappear amplified each time it does due to its prior suppression. Alternatively, by feeling your way through your anger, you can begin to understand it. If it's another person you're angry with and avoiding her isn't an option, then perhaps begin by understanding that this person is simply doing her own best. However poor you might judge her best to be. It's just where the person is in her own spiritual evolution. Realize that you are the source of your anger, not someone else or the events of your life. They just are what they are until you come along and pass judgment based on your beliefs. That's when emotions are ignited. Without you in the picture, there wouldn't be any anger, at least not your anger. And while you may feel justified, with how you feel, how much good will that do if you are still left with the anger? Instead, work with your thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions to avoid its expression, and just as importantly, its suppression. I'm struggling right now. Grief is perhaps the darkest of feelings and usually sparked by loss, perhaps due to death. This emotion robs you of your will to live. Yet, it's an emotion that every life faces and that everyone must overcome. Time is the best remedy for grief, and allowing yourself to feel it is part of the healing. Afterwards, however, there needs to be a concerted effort to get back into the swing of things. Grief, like like all unpleasant emotions, also arise out of limiting beliefs that tell you your loss is permanent and forever. But as an eternal spiritual being, you should be able to grasp that no loss is ever permanent, that there are no final goodbyes, and that there are no irreconcilable separations. These are all illusions. You will be together with your loved ones again, and it will be soon. In the meantime, you still have the gift of life, that priceless opportunity to live, love, and laugh. It's still your turn in time and space, and the band is still playing. The fact that you were left behind unquestionably means you still have something to live, you still have some living to do. My uncle used to say, things are never as black as they seem. And while the blackness may seem absolutely impenetrable at times, it will later seem impossible that you ever saw things as dire as you do. We've all been there, and if that's where you find yourself one day, just hang on, it will pass. It too shall pass. Guilt. Guilt, like humanity's definition of sin, should serve only to teach, not to punish. Let me repeat that. Guilt, like humanity's definition of sin, should serve only to teach, not to punish. Learning not to be perfect is why we're here, and no transgression of yours can ever take away from your divinity, nor has it. No matter what you've done, and nothing you've ever done can keep the infinite love of the universe from shining on you. When there's guilt, let it emblazon the lesson learned in your memory so that the mistake will never again be repeated. Just as importantly, keep looking forward with hope and optimism. Joy and happiness. Thankfully, not all emotions are unpleasant. Joy and happiness are the emotions that signal your progress through prior lessons that have brought you to a place of peace and acceptance, and inner spiritual pleasure about your affairs. And whether or not it's apparent, there are the fruits of earlier pains, challenges, and obstacles faced and conquered. For instance, you might think vacation in Hawaii is the ultimate holiday and that it brings you happiness. You might even think that it's because of the beautiful scenery, the laid-back atmosphere, and the perfect weather. But what you're really feeling is the accomplishment of having persisted, and faced earlier life changes, some even many years ago, that have brought you to a point in time where you choose to enjoy an idyllic holiday destination. Because you dealt with challenges and fears you've long forgotten, you were able to grow and gain momentum in the pursuit of living the life of your dreams. Just ask anyone who lives in Hawaii. They'll tell you it's just a place. I bet a beautiful place. But joy and happiness don't come from a place. They come from inside. And that's where they come from when you've gained a mastery over your perceptions. Panning for gold. Your emotions are jewels that each have its own lessons to impart, and when dealt with, their teachings will reveal the beliefs behind the illusions you've created. Dealing with them first means feeling them, and only by feeling them can you begin to understand their presence in your life and the wisdom they offer. If you're experiencing emotions that hurt or distract you, get to their source, their root, to the beliefs that gave them rise, and begin understanding those things that you currently misunderstand. Like pulling weeds in the garden. You don't just shear them off at the top unless you want them to come back. You go to their roots and completely dispose of them. By suppressing your emotions, they build up like water behind a dam, because thoughts, once born, seek their own time and space expression. If they are repeatedly unexpressed, they'll finally explode into your life with such a pent-up force that their sudden presence will exceed the balance necessary to view your life in the proper perspective. They'll overwhelm you with such a distorted view of your reality that your subsequent reaction may also be wildly out of proportion. Suppressing your emotions is like ignoring the smell of smoke in your home. You're avoiding the recognition that there are underlying beliefs of yours that are their cause. Acknowledge your unpleasant feelings. You're their source, and only you can release or replace them once their presence is understood. You can change how you feel, but to do this, you must begin with yourself. Take action, do something, and remember that you are living in a perfect and fair world. One that throws you a hook only when you're ready to swing, understand, grow, and be happier than ever before. Just as important as not suppressing your emotions is not allowing yourself to wallow in them. Their natural state is flowing. They come and go like tides in the sea. Allow them to run their course, and you'll find they lend a new perspective to the life you lead, administering their own remedies and insights in the perfect doses. Okay. Acknowledge your unpleasant feelings. You're their source, and only you can release or replace them once their presence is understood. Having unpleasant emotions doesn't necessarily mean that you must suddenly begin exploring the depths of your beliefs. In fact, unless they're really crushing you, you feeling them often provides a sort of therapy. But feeling is wildly different from wallowing. When you wallow in your emotions, you empower them. You draw to yourself more of the same. Sadness breeds sadness, just among groups of people, but within your own mind. Just as happiness breeds happiness. And that is the end. I really need a nap. And I'm hungry. So hungry. I think I'm gonna get some watermelon if they have some cut. And I'm gonna eat a whole one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ski.